regretted the things I've said without thinking, but I never regretted the words I left unspoken, or I have, oh, it's supposed to say, but I've always regretted, wait. Okay, what I regret are the things I left unspoken. And the thing about that I have to say is that sometimes I say half of what I mean. Because I'm afraid, or because I'm intimidated, because I'm thinking there might be a repercussion, because I want you to like me and I don't want you to hear, what it is I really think. So the final thing is our actions are really what speaks louder than words. What my staff are watching, what we're all watching is not so much what I say, but what I do. And whether or not what I do is consistent with what I say. So those are some thoughts as we start this module. Let's start with listening. So number one, there's a big difference between listening and hearing, right? I am the queen of this. I was telling Norma I flunk in some of these areas. I have ADHD and I have to really focus to be a good listener. My favorite one is, I know that you believe you understood what you think I said, but I'm not sure you realize what you heard is not what I meant. That's kind of, communication going haywire. And for you guys, for those of us who supervise people, the ear of the leader must ring with the voices of the people. So if what we're saying and doing does not connect with the people we're managing, it's not a problem of the people we're managing. It's a problem with what we're doing. We have to fix that. So what I want to do is a little activity. And I was going to have us count off into groups, but we don't have that many groups. So how about if this side of the room is a group, and you guys can move up here and be the other group?
If they move there, your camera angles.
Well, I'll move here. I'm going to stay here.
No, the camera's there. Nobody can be at that white table or they'll be in front of you.
Oh, I see. All right, I know another way. You three join this group, and you all be a group. And would you pass those around? We're going to just do a little activity. No, you're going to be talking. Okay, I hear an objection to the groups. So I'm going to uncomplicate it because I think it's a good suggestion. See, I'm listening. I heard you, didn't I? We'll just do it as a group and keep it simple. I was thinking we might have more people, so I had it in my head. So you get to sit. You get to go back. Yeah, you may move, Erin. All right. Let's talk about active listening, blocks to active listening. Any of you daydream when someone's talking to you? Like right now? At this very moment?
Yes.
When do you usually find yourself daydreaming?
Driving.
Oh, me too.
Or after lunch.
How about when you're talking, when do you find yourself shutting down? What is it that makes you shut down or wander off?
I think when I think you're giving me the answer that I expected, I kind of stop listening. So they might not really be giving me the answer that I think that I'm expecting.
That's a good one.
The conversation is repetitive and boring.
Yes. Like when I was young and my mother said it one more time, you are who your friends are. But what happens when you wander off? Yeah, that happens to me. Now I'll be trying to pay attention, and at some point, without my knowledge or consent, my brain wanders off, and then I don't hear the whole conversation, then I don't understand. So it creates a breach in our understanding and our communication. So that's a problem.
Some of it for me isn't so much daydreaming as I'm formulating a response or a rebuttal, and I'm
which is the second point, rehearsing.
Yeah.
While you're talking, I'm thinking of what I'm saying. Anybody else ever do that? Rehearse? Come on now. When you're mad, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read some people's minds in here right now because I'm a psychic. When you're mad and you're in the car on the way to work, you're going, this is what I'm going to say, and this is what they're going to say when I say that. And then I'm going to say this, and then they're going to say that. Or you keep reformulating, well, I'm going to write this memo, and then I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to tell so-and-so. We all do that. We all rehearse. You know I do it. Maybe you guys don't, but sometimes it's kind of like you watch your movie and I'll watch mine, you know. Have this own thought process going on in our heads. But what rehearsing does is it means we fail to listen. Are there any special situations that cause you to rehearse? What are the triggers?
When you feel attacked.
Yeah, when you feel attacked. When you know someone disagrees with you already. Or you expect someone to disagree. They might not even disagree. They might be agreeing with you while you're talking, and you're rehearsing your argument with what they agree with. Anybody ever had that happen? I know I have.
So you're already sure they're wrong.
Yeah, or you're sure they're wrong. And you know, what are some of the reliefs for this thinking that you know of?
Listen to what they're saying first, and then if you need a second to formulate your response.
Yeah.
It's like people want to be ready to respond instantly, but you can take a minute to think after you listen.
10 seconds between your mouth and your brain would be good. Another thing is, what if we kind of changed how we think about interpersonal communications in general? What if we eliminated right and wrong out of the vocabulary? Because what's right to me might not be right to you. Right and wrong are relative terms. And there are 1,000 ways to do things, are there not? And so it doesn't have to be the way I think or the way I see it. I can change my glasses and look at the situation and say, well, that isn't how I do it, or that isn't how I feel, but it's okay if they do. And it eliminates the need for I'm right, you're wrong, black, white kind of thinking. I notice sometimes a problem for me is when I think I have a point, I want to interrupt after I've rehearsed. I've rehearsed so good that I feel I got myself all built up now in my mind, you know, that I want to let it explode. And that doesn't help with communication either. There's a comedian that I know of, and he has a bit that he does called First Thought Wrong. And the premise of it is that a lot of times when we're feeling emotional, our first thought is wrong. And we need to do what Norma said, which is to take a few minutes and process what we're hearing and go to the second or the third thought. Like when someone irritates me or frustrates me, you know, my first thought is to say something that starts with an F. And I'm normally not in a setting where I would want to use that terminology either in my home or here. So I need to reject that first idea and move on to, I understand why you feel that way. I hear what you're saying. You have a right to feel that way. Maybe I am wrong. 4 very powerful words in communication to be able to say, maybe I'm wrong. Can you help me understand? You know? Powerful, powerful, powerful words. They take all of the angst and the torque out of the communication and they put it in the right realm. I kind of use, when I think about communication, I think about where it comes from and where it's going to. Where it comes from is either our head, our heart, or our gut. Our thoughts, our emotions, or our intuition. Now, if you're going to ask me a question about how to find a file on the computer, where do I want to answer that question from? My head. That's a thought, right? What happens if I answer it with an emotion?
You're going to be upset.
needless drama, right? What happens if I try to answer it with intuition? I'm assuming I know what that person thinks. How many of you like to have other people assume they know what you think? How enjoyable is that? Yeah. That's kind of insulting, kind of frost my cookies when it happens. Although I'm not all that hard to beat. Like, I don't play poker. But, so part of the problem in communication is communicating with the wrong part about the subject of what we're communicating to, and then we add what I call torque to the communication. So I can say, have a nice day, in a way that's totally insulting if I respond to you with my emotions. I can say, have a nice day with my thoughts, and it's going to come out differently. Or I can say, have a nice day, and I'm saying that because you just told me something horrible happened, and I'm wanting to respond with my intuition, right? So not only do we have all of these things we have to do to communicate, but we have to have it come from the right place with the right direction, so that we don't set off smoke detectors and create drama where none is needed. That doesn't mean responding with feelings isn't appropriate at times. You know, like sometimes I use emotion because someone's not hearing me because I'm using my head too much. And I'm not a big fan of emotions, actually. I try not to have them. But I'm a thought person. You know, some of us are thinkers, some of us are feelers, some of us are intuition people. And I'm more of a thought person, so the first place I go is not an emotion. But sometimes that's where I have to go so I can get the message across that this is important to me and I need you to hear it. So we have to be careful how we use those things. Then we have filtering. Like, have you guys ever had a conversation with someone and then you get an email back from them and what they just said to you was completely not what you were trying to say? That a lot of the details are missing. Here's where I think that comes from. Here's how I am. I don't know about you guys, but you might not be like me. I might just be crazy. In life, I think that I have this giant filter, and underneath it is the picture of how I want life to be, how I want the world to be. And whenever information comes through that filter that does not match my picture, I naturally want to reject it and only accept that data with fits with how I want things to be. Anybody else do this? Anybody tend to minimize a little bit things that they're told? Or maximize them, catastrophize them a little bit? Because this is the picture I have. If the picture I have is that Danielle is an evil person and I get data that comes in that is going to fit with that, I'm going to blow it up, right? But if I have information that comes in that says, oh no, she's not, I'm going to minimize it.
I'm not.
But let me make my proclamation. Danielle is a wonderful human being. And she's also a very good employee. So I want to caution you that I don't, it's just an example. And that is true also, isn't it? That we all have opinions and perceptions and judgments, and anybody who says they don't is not very self-reflective. Because as human beings, it is our nature. I mean, all you have to do is walk in a mall and sit down and see how many judgments you make in the next 12 minutes. We're going to be thousands, right? I try really hard not to have those preconceived notions. I used to live in Streetsboro, and whenever I went into Walmart there, I noticed this judgment thing going on, and I really don't like it because what's going on there isn't kind and it's not helpful. And I'd like to be a kind, helpful person. So I'm praying and I'm working on this character defect of mine and trying to, make it go away. And I thought I was really making some progress. And then I walked into Walmart and there was a guy that was dressed really kind of crazy and acting like kind of crazy. And I thought, okay, this is my challenge. This is my teacher standing right here. How am I going to do this? So it's important to be aware of how we judge and how we perceive what's going on. Like I said, you watch your movie, I'll watch mine. We can sit in this meeting and we can go out and write 10 pages about what we think happened, and if I compared all of those things, I would get some people that have an emotional description of what occurred, some people with an intuitive description of what occurred, some people with some brain, an outline of what occurred, and even the events won't match. So as long as we go into it knowing that we're all in a different place, I think it helps in terms of listening to stop with the filtering and to just hear what someone says and take it for what it is without all of that other stuff that our brains like to do. Sometimes I imagine that I have a committee up there in my head, and that the committee is, kind of playing games with me a little bit. I've got like a bad person and a good person on my committee, and I've got, the fashion police up there, and I've got, that kind of thing. So I have to be careful.
Hey, Jane,
Yeah.
can you go back to a step or two, like the intuitive responses? I don't
Yeah.
think I completely understood those. Like another example or something and why they're sometimes out of place?
Well, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, yeah. Intuition is good when, I know for a fact, you have told me how you feel, and I know the place that you're in today, and so I'm responding to you in accordance with that. Like, if I know you're having a really great day, I might want to just send you a fun email that'll make you laugh, or send you something that says you're a great employee, or thank you, because I know that's the space that you're in. So that's a good use of intuitive thinking. What's not good about intuition is if I believe it 100% of the time, because it's not always right. If I look across the room and say, okay, this is where LA is today, that would be false, automatically before I even do it, because I can't tell how LA feels today at all. But if I said, LA, how do you feel today, and she tells me, now I can respond to her.
So what's an example of how it could cause problems? I'm still not 100%, like in our work.
Okay. You guys have worked together for a long time, a lot of you, right? And so, if Sharon believes that she knows Marcel really well, and Marcel takes an action, but he just makes a short note about it, not a long note, right? Then Sharon might decide what Marcel was thinking. She might be right, she might not be, but we would want her to check that out before she did any action, right? I mean, sometimes we honestly do know what someone else is thinking. Is that not true? I mean, I know there are some people who can read me pretty good and who know what I'm thinking, but I would not want them to decide whether or not I get $100,000 on that unless they ask me. I would not want an email sent to Tom unless they ask me first, and unless they check their intuition. You and I have a very intuitive relationship, but there's certain things we wouldn't want to occur unless we said, is this where you are? In fact, we ask each other every day, all day, is this what you're saying? Because we know that we don't want to make that mistake. So that's what I mean. Does that clarify some for you?
Yeah, I think so.
For you? Okay. So there's good.
I think it's more hard to read when you have, in the direct care staffing that we have, it's not that cut and dry.
No, and we don't see them that much, and we're not, like the midnight staff, how many of you guys, have worked more than a couple midnights with your midnight people? I mean, we really don't know what happens when they check in. We know what you would do if you're working a midnight, right? But we don't know what that person does, or what that person is thinking about working a midnight. And sometimes I think people make mistakes, honestly, that when you look at them, you would think, oh my God, did they really do that, right?
So like if you get a vague voicemail from an employee calling off and they sound frantic and say it's an emergency, you could assume that they're full of crap and nothing happened, but you should actually wait until the next day when you can follow up and get, you said you blew your tire, can you show me that?
Yeah.
Versus assuming that they can.
Yes. Here's a good idea, here's a good example that Covey uses, Stephen Covey. He talks about, he's in a subway in New York every Sunday morning going to see his family. And he gets the plain deal, or not the plain deal, he gets a New York Times and he gets a cup of coffee. He's in there. Did I tell you this one already? Okay. I always have extra stories. So he's in there and a guy gets in with 5 kids. Now there's nobody in the subway on Sunday morning drinking coffee and reading their paper. So he enjoys it, peace and quiet and that kind of thing. The subway stops and a guy gets in with his 4 kids and they're just all over the place and making noise and, you know, running around and all that kind of stuff. And he's frustrated and he's assuming that this guy doesn't care about his kids and is not paying attention to his kids, right? And is not being a good parent. Any ever thought that in a restaurant? You ever? Okay. So, if that were my kid, and I've done it, I'm telling you. So, I have walked out of McDonald's with no food more than once. So, what he said to the guy, he finally got so frustrated, he said, do you think you could, you know, manage your kids a little bit? And the guy goes, oh, I am so sorry, they just lost their mother at the hospital. We don't know. And we just always need to remember that even though we think we know, we don't know. And we need to give people the benefit of the doubt. We do. And those of us who are head people are not as good at it as emotion people and intuitive people, because head people, we're always looking at facts, policies, procedures, rules, laws, codes. You know, what is, what isn't, the concrete world. And the concrete world is only a small part. You know, what really matters in life is not concrete, is it? It is not that part. I talked a little bit about the judging piece, so are we all clear about the judging? Everybody knows when they're doing it? I imagine with this stuff that I am standing in a hula hoop, and everything in that hula hoop is my business. I can't change anything outside of my hula hoop. So there's no point in judging unless I want to take care of my business first. So when I'm perfect, and I have made myself, you know, perfect, then I can do that. I am terrible with distraction. Like, Norma sometimes has to say to me, Jane, are you listening to me? Because I'll go back to the computer screen, you know, because an email is calling me, or, you know, my cell phone is making a noise or whatever, or someone walks by. It's hard for me. I have to really focus, and she's learned that about me, and she's learned how to manage me in that respect. It's very easy. How many of you could probably knock back to 30 hours and get your job done? How many of you could use 80 hours in a week? Yeah. We're all doing more with less, right? We work very hard. We have lots of responsibilities. They're very complex responsibilities because there's a lot of people involved that we don't even see at work. This whole thing with us being spread over all these counties, and you guys being spread over all these shifts and locations, the truth is we don't control any of it, yet our job is to control it. So it's very easy to be distracted when you have so much to do, and our work doesn't go on a schedule like, okay, at 9 o'clock, I will be interrupted by a phone call, you know, from so-and-so. And then 9:15, I am scheduling the employee injury. And then at 9:30, we will get a UIR that we have to report as an MUI, so we're having alphabet soup for lunch. You know, we don't get to schedule it, it just comes when it comes. It doesn't matter if licensure here, does it? No. Congratulations, by the way, on your survey yesterday. Yay! You guys rock. So what helps with the distraction in listening? How can we?
Say, or because especially if I find myself getting distracted.
That's a good one. Repeat back what you're hearing is a good one. You know what else is good? Create a parking lot in your mind. Sometimes people come to me, like I did this to myself, and this is why I was late this morning. Norma and I had to talk to Tom, but I got out of Tom's meeting in time to be on time here. But then I decided I wanted to talk to Norma about a little situation, and I got distracted talking to Norma, and then I was late. And what I could have done is I could have said, Norman, I got all day to talk about this, and I could have put it in my parking lot. And so things that come at me, there's a difference between urgency and emergency. An emergency is call 911. Urgency is when your teenager says, I need a new shirt, I have to go to the mall, I cannot go to school tomorrow unless I have a new shirt, and you gotta take me to the mall or else I'm gonna die. That's urgency, but when people speak to you with urgency, it's hard to sort out whether or not it's an emergency or not, right? And if we could just sort out, okay, wait a minute, in the terms of the things I have to do today, how important is this? Where does it go? And again, it's a 10-second window Norma was talking about to kind of think through what our response will be. And I have a tendency, because of my ADHD, to want to do things right now so I don't forget them or so they don't get lost. But that's not always the best plan of action. And Norma and I are having a contest for who can have the most windows open on the computer, and I'm sure some of you can compete with us. But it's about prioritizing and saying, you know what, this is a distraction right now. And you don't tell that person that, but in your mind you go, this is really not something I should be dealing with. So you say, can I get back with you tomorrow? Would you write me an email on that so that I don't forget to respond to you? That's very important. But right now I have something else I have to do. There's a lot of polite ways to put off, those kinds of distractions. And it's very hard for me to focus when I get a lot of distractions. So what's going on in the inside with the committee in my head, I have to step away from the table when I am listening and focus on you. Right now, I'm having a conversation with you. And I don't need to be in here running around on the hamster wheels, with the committee popping up and down. I need to just focus. I also, if I focus on giving the other person positive encouragement to communicate with me, it prompts me to pay attention. So if I smile at the person, or I ask a question, or say more, or could you give me more detail, then that helps get me focused on what I need to be focused on. And are you looking for any ideas? Oh no. Oh my God. And I didn't recognize the pink vest, which is my favorite. I don't have my glasses on, that's my only excuse. I went to get glasses the other day, $500. So I need to find some other place to get some old people glasses.
Online. I'll see you at
Good. And then I can't pay $500 for glasses.
Do you know your prescription?
Yeah.
Zenni Optical.
right
Okay.
online. Or
All right.
Coastal or.
And our
you need is
insurance
your
takes it?
prescription.
No, they so cheap, you don't need.
Yeah, these cost $6.95. All you need is your prescription and pick what
Online.
frames you want.
Okay. Good.
I get all my
Thank you.
prescriptions
Zenni
online.
All you have to do is put it out there.
Zenni Optical.
All right.
And you, only thing you need is your prescription, you plug it
With the
in,
prescription.
and then you can put a picture of yourself
Zenni
with
Optical.
the glass.
Zenni. I bought 3 pairs of glasses and paid $35 plus shipping and handling. $35.
Yes.
You can't
But
try
you,
it on,
but you can take a
you
picture,
stop.
you can take a picture of
You
yourself,
can.
put it online and put
That
the
doesn't
glass.
mean how they.
But you need your, I forgot what it's called. You can measure your, from pupil to pupil with a ruler,
Yeah.
and it'll tell you like,
$0.95.
I know you
They're
can buy like
bad.
20 pairs.
no, but you can
I put it up there for you guys, anybody who didn't get it.
Zenni,
Now, that was
Zenni.com.
positive encouragement, was it not? And what was the result? We had really good communication about something people needed to know,
And
right?
usually the measurements for your glasses are on the inside of the frame. Or you could try online, look, or you could try, these are 65 or whatever the thing is, and then they fit 65. Everybody's put
Yeah.
videos
The other thing is what Erin was talking about is feeding back your understanding. What I think you just said is that we can get inexpensive glasses and we don't need health insurance or vision insurance to do it if we go to zennioptical.com. So clearly I understood that communication. And why? I was listening, and why? Because it was motivating, and why? Because it hits my pocketbook. So that's clear. Having a good motive. It's what I want. I wanted to hear that. So now we're going to talk about talking. These are just some quotes. My favorite is the last. Show restraint of pen and tongue. Which means, when I'm all worked up and the committee has cooked up a good one, that's when I need to say, Norma, would you, can I say this to these people? Especially because I don't know you guys as well. How long have you been here, Sharon?
29 years.
Okay, so the Natty you see is not the one I see. I mean, we're not watching the same movie. And so I can't even communicate with you without beginning to understand a little bit from someone who's in that world, right? What their experience has been. And so I need to be careful and take that 10 seconds to think about it before I say it. So here's some blockage to verbal communication. The first is assumption. A guy named Herbert Spencer said, contempt prior to investigation leads to everlasting ignorance. The short version is, my mind is made up, don't confuse me with the facts. You ever been in that place? When you've already decided how you feel and what's going on, and you've made your decision. Anybody ever make an incorrect assumption? Never. 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 Well, I have.
Are you for real?
No, she's being
I'm being very
facetious.
sarcastic.
Us head people again, you know, my mind is clicking when I'm thinking of, and I'm putting together, you know, this scenario, that scenario, what happened before, what happened now, the policies. I mean, there's a computer up there processing it. If I'm a heart person making an assumption, I'm thinking, oh, my feelings are hurt, they're looking hurt, you know, and I'm not thinking about any facts about it, or too many facts. Any of you ever made an emotional decision? Now, some decisions need to be made with emotion. What's a decision you would make with your emotions?
Like somebody call off and say that their mother's in a hospital, or,
Yeah.
you know.
An employee called me the other day and was panicking because she didn't have some documentation. And I'm like, just send me a memo. We'll take care of it. Stop it. You're gonna pay your rent. You know, that I need my heart to make that decision. My head needs to shut up because it did not have anything good to say in that situation. So this whole thing with making up our minds is we can be kind of closed-minded. And if we want to work together and if we want to communicate with each other, at the end of the session, I'm going to talk about this a little more, but we have to be honest, open-minded, and willing. Honest with ourselves, honest with each other. Open-minded, meaning I might not always be right, or what I think may not always be the truth. And willing, meaning willing to change directions, willing to move. Because if everybody here is